Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story, one that begins like a regular day and spirals into pure chaos. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Quit on Black Friday after watching my team get screwed over. So for context, I'm currently a head cashier at Home Depot. I work in a higher volume store that remodeled the front end where our registers are a couple months ago, where our central checkout is now entirely self-checkout registers, referred to as SCO. While it's SCO, it's known as Assisted SCO, and they want us to be assisting as much as possible. 6 items or more, high-price items, and anything that could hide anything inside of it are a must, as well as pushing credit card applications. Now, here's where there's been a huge issue. Starting with the cashiers not pushing credit enough, so we fell behind on our goal. So last week, to make up for it, around halfway through the week, my supervisor told us she wanted everyone physically on a register, head cashiers included. They don't even want us checking the schedule to send breaks or the cashiers home, even though no one's allowed to get overtime. Unless there's money to handle, we aren't allowed off of a register. I bet some of you can understand how frustrating that is. It's literally a SCO. I'm having more people starting to get upset that we're constantly helping them than when we changed it to a SCO, and had a ton of people angry that there aren't normal registers in the main area of the store. 2 to 3 normal registers open total on the opposite ends of the store, and that's it. And me and the other head cashiers weren't complying the entire time about staying on our register 100% of the time, because we were going to prioritize at least knowing when to send breaks and our cashiers home, even if it meant us getting into trouble. Well, today was Black Friday, and my supervisor, along with the store and a few other managers, were lurking around almost constant. A couple actually helped, which was appreciated, but I digress. The other day I mentioned to my supervisor when she insisted head cashiers had to stay on a register how we were supposed to send breaks or how we would direct the line, because most people won't walk to an open register even when SCO is empty. She told me to figure it out, and if I have to keep my head on a swivel so I can check customers out and get the line down, then so be it. So I let them run the show. They put me on a register. I complied. I only left when I was told to cover for someone going home or to use the bathroom. My lunch was 2 hours late. I didn't say anything until an hour and a half after the fact, because I rarely get my breaks on time anyways, but my lunch is mandatory because no overtime. My lunch wasn't the only break late, though. When I finally got to go on my lunch, one of my cashiers came back from the bathroom, and we both saw his 15-minute break was nearly an hour late. I apologized and let him know I hadn't been allowed to check the schedule, or I would have sent him already. I told him to go, but let him know he should double-check with our supervisor just in case, since that would mean 2 people would be leaving at once. Then I come back from my lunch and find out one of our full-time cashiers was forgotten on one of the few normal registers and was actively building overtime, something, if I was physically there for, would have never happened, as she leaves at the same time every day, except I was on my lunch 2 hours late. Then later I'm sent to garden to cover a lunch over half an hour late. When I got back inside, another cashier calls because his 15 is over half an hour late, almost 45 minutes. That's just some of what happened. I wasn't allowed to do my job, and therefore my cashiers were actively being forgotten about because it wasn't important enough. Oh, and we got just as much credit card applications as we did early last week before we were forced to constantly be on registers. It's not about being on a register, it's about asking in general. Something I may not like, but I do because it's my job. Or at least it was. After seeing how me not doing my job to comply with dumb rules that makes no sense affected my cashiers today, and the fact I got a call back from another job, I put my 2 weeks in, just to seal the deal after a crappy day. But I'm happy. I'm leaving Hell Depot and couldn't be happier. I just work for my cashiers, who are probably going to continue to suffer with these new rules and regulations, and especially if anyone above them actually complies to them 100%. Why do companies always seem to promote clueless people to management positions, and surprise, surprise, they have no idea what they're asking for and the effect it'll have, then end up losing good employees because of it? And our second story. He played office politics, I played by the policy manual. I won. I used to work for a company where the unwritten motto was play nice to their face, stab them in the back later. One boss in particular, let's call him Steve, was a master of that game. He tried hard to act like one of the guys, lots of fake laughing at jokes, awkwardly inserting himself into casual lunch chats, and constantly trying to convince us he was on our side. But behind closed doors, he was petty, manipulative, and made it his mission to get anyone who didn't suck up to him fired. Now, I was one of the older employees on the team, and for whatever reason, Steve zeroed in on me. Maybe he thought I wasn't fitting in with the younger crowd, or maybe I didn't bow and scrape like some of the others. Either way, he decided I was a target. One company policy we had was that no pictures or posters were allowed in our immediate workspaces. Nothing with people, slogans, or anything deemed unprofessional by HR standards. I had an astronomical calendar up, just beautiful photos of galaxies, stars, eclipses, nothing even remotely controversial. But suddenly, HR sent me an email with a blurry photo attached claiming an anonymous complaint had been filed about my calendar. They said even though no individuals are depicted, it still qualifies as personal material, whatever that meant. But here's the kicker. We'd seen Steve walking around our area with his phone out, casually taking pictures of desks. Not sneaky enough to fool anyone. The anonymous part was laughable. Fine, I complied, took down the calendar and replaced it with something even more bland, a birthday quote calendar with tiny font inspirational quotes from historical figures. Still technically a calendar, still technically legal. 2 weeks later, Steve's back again, phone in hand, acting like he's trying to document a crime scene. Sure enough, HR reaches out. This time, though, they said the quote calendar was acceptable. No images, no offensive text, small print. I was in the clear. And that's when I decided to flip the script. That evening, when Steve had left for a meeting, I walked into his office and took pictures, carefully angled shots showing the dozen framed photos of his wife and kids scattered all over. It looked like a gallery. Each one had his nameplate in the foreground, clearly proving whose office it was. I printed out the pictures and anonymously submitted them to HR, citing the same policy he'd tried to use against me. You would have thought I'd shot his dog. He came in the next morning, red-faced and ranting to anyone who would listen about how heartless people were for going after family photos. He boxed them up, sulked for days, and whined about how unfair it was. HR didn't do much at first. Maybe a warning, but the damage to his little power trip had been done. A few months later, he got fired for unrelated antics. Turns out I wasn't the only one he was targeting. Other complaints finally caught up with him. I stayed until full retirement. Still get a good laugh when I think about it. Steve wasn't a boss, he was a snake with a lanyard. Classic petty tyrant who thought company policy was a weapon just for him. You played it perfectly. He used HR like a blunt instrument to swing at your desk calendar, and you turned around and exposed him with nothing but his own hypocrisy and a few well-timed photos. Beautiful. And our last story. HOA tried to charge my neighbor $5,000 over a minor oil leak. Let me take you back to a few years ago when I lived in a neighborhood with, you guessed it, an HOA. Asphalt driveways, cookie-cutter homes, and a board of self-important community protectors who took their job way too seriously. Now, one of my neighbors, Dave, had this older Toyota Camry that leaked a tiny bit of oil. Nothing dramatic. We're talking the occasional drip or two on his driveway. Dave was a solid dude, quiet, respectful, worked at the post office. When the HOA first noticed the stains, they sent him a friendly reminder to keep his driveway clean. So Dave, being Dave, took care of it. He used cat litter, a broom, even bought one of those driveway degreasers. Every week he was out there scrubbing. Then came the letter. Not so friendly this time. Your driveway remains an aesthetic issue and violates Article 4, Section 2 of the Community Appearance Guidelines. We'll be taking corrective action. No explanation of what corrective action meant, just a vague threat. Dave was confused and a little rattled. A week later, a crew showed up. I was on my porch when I saw a skid loader rolling down the street like a tank heading into battle. The guys had orange vests, a dump trailer, and a bunch of tools. One of them knocked on Dave's door and said, "We're here to remove and replace the driveway." Dave blinked. "What? Who sent you?" "HOA," the guy shrugged. "Work order says to dig up and repay. Full job." Dave told them to leave. They didn't. So Dave called the HOA president. The conversation was heated. "You can't just tear up my property without my consent," Dave shouted on speakerphone. "You've damaged common elements," came the smug reply from Karen. Yes, her name was actually Karen. "The HOA has the right to repair and bill the homeowner." They ended up digging it up. Dave got a $5,184 bill in the mail 2 days later. That's when the real story began, because Dave's next-door neighbor, Alan, a civil litigation attorney. And Alan was done with the HOA's crap. He took the case pro bono. I remember him standing in Dave's driveway, photos in hand, saying, "They want war over a few oil drips? Let's give them a reason to actually sweat." Turns out the HOA had no solid clause in their bylaws allowing unilateral action on private property. The board had overstepped, big time. Alan drafted a demand letter citing unlawful property damage, unauthorized contractor access, and harassment. He also hinted at a class action if they didn't back off. 2 weeks later, the board had an emergency meeting. You could tell they weren't used to being challenged. They tried to bluff, claimed they were protecting community value. Alan didn't flinch. "This isn't about community value," he said, calm and icy. "It's about abuse of authority. And if you don't rescind that bill and compensate for the damage, I'll file a suit so fast your board meetings will need a legal defense budget." They caved. The bill vanished. Dave got a brand new driveway for free. Karen was suddenly taking a break from board duties. The rest of the HOA? Suddenly quiet. But the residents weren't. Over the next few elections, we voted every single one of them out. One guy even campaigned with the slogan, "Remember Dave's driveway." As for me, I sold the next year and moved far, far away from HOA land. My new home has trees, no rules about mailbox color, and I can change my oil in the driveway without fearing a full-scale blacktop invasion. It's stories like this that make you realize HOAs only have power when no one pushes back. Shine a legal spotlight and suddenly they're all just volunteers doing their best. So yeah, long live Dave, and may his free driveway gleam like a monument to suburban justice. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.